He seemed like a normal man until something very disturbing happened. And what police found next changed everything.
I had to kill a lot of people!
Now, the first clue didn't look like a clue at all. It was just another missing person report, one of many filed every year across the United States. No signs of forced entry, no witnesses, no clear reason for concern. At least, not at first. But when investigators looked closer, they noticed something unsettling. The disappearances were connected, and whoever was behind them had been hiding in plain sight. His name was Daniel Reeves, a 38-year-old man living in a quiet neighborhood just outside a major U.S. city. To most people, Daniel seemed ordinary, polite, well-spoken, even charming. He worked freelance, kept to himself, and maintained a small but active presence online. He was also openly gay and part of a local social community where he was known as friendly and approachable. People described him as someone easy to talk to, someone who made others feel comfortable quickly. And that's exactly what made him so dangerous. Before anything raised suspicion, the pattern began quietly. Young men started disappearing. They came from different backgrounds, different parts of the city, but they shared one thing in common. They had all recently connected with someone online before vanishing. At first, families assumed the worst in the usual ways. Maybe they left voluntarily, maybe they needed space, maybe they'd return. But they didn't. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the silence became impossible to ignore. Investigators began reviewing the cases side by side. At first, there were no clear links, no shared workplaces, no common friends, no obvious connections. But then, something small stood out. Phone records. Several of the missing individuals had been in contact with the same number shortly before they disappeared, a number registered under a different name, but when traced further, it led back to Daniel Reeves. That was the first moment his name entered the investigation. Still, it wasn't enough to act on. People meet online all the time. Conversations don't mean guilt. But detectives didn't stop there. They dug deeper into Daniel's digital footprint, messages, app activity, location data. And what they found raised more questions than answers. Daniel had been actively communicating with multiple men across various platforms. His messages were friendly at first, casual, inviting, sometimes even warm. He would suggest meeting in person. Some agreed, and those who did were never seen again. The investigation intensified. Detectives began interviewing people within the same social circles. Some remembered Daniel, others didn't, but a few recalled something strange. He had a way of moving between groups, blending in just enough to avoid standing out. He wasn't loud or attention-seeking. He was careful, calculated. Then came a breakthrough. A man who had interacted with Daniel came forward. He hadn't gone to meet him, but he had been invited. According to his statement, Daniel suggested a private meetup, away from busy areas. Something about the tone felt off, so he declined. At the time, it seemed insignificant. Now, it felt like a narrow escape. With growing concern, investigators placed Daniel under surveillance. They watched his movements, tracked his routines, monitored his interactions. Everything appeared normal, too normal. But then, something changed. One evening, Daniel was seen meeting someone new. The interaction seemed casual at first, but it quickly became clear they were leaving together. Detectives followed. What happened next would shift the entire case. The individual Daniel met was later reported missing, and this time, investigators had a timeline. They moved quickly. Search warrants were issued. Daniel's residence was examined. Inside, everything looked clean, organized, almost staged. But investigators knew what to look for: hidden traces, subtle signs, and eventually they found them. evidence that tied Daniel directly to multiple disappearances, items that didn't belong to him, digital records he hadn't fully erased, and patterns that could no longer be dismissed. The case was no longer a mystery. It was something far more serious. Daniel Reeves was arrested without resistance. During questioning, he remained calm, composed, cooperative, but distant. When asked about the missing individuals, he denied any wrongdoing, but the evidence kept building. Data recovered from his devices showed repeated contact with victims. Location tracking placed him near last known sightings. His movements aligned too closely to ignore. And then came the final piece, a recovered file. It wasn't obvious at first, but once analyzed, it revealed a timeline Daniel had been keeping privately. Dates, names, encounters. Not written like a confession, but detailed enough to expose a pattern, one that investigators had been trying to piece together for months. Now it was all there. The realization was chilling. This wasn't random, it was intentional. In court, the prosecution laid out the case step by step. They showed how Daniel used trust as a tool, how he approached people, gained their confidence, and arranged meetings that led to their disappearance. Experts described his behavior as controlled, methodical, and deeply calculated. The defense argued lack of direct witnesses, but the pattern was undeniable. The connections were clear, and the evidence overwhelming. After deliberation, the jury reached a verdict: guilty. The courtroom remained silent as the decision was read. Daniel showed little reaction, no visible emotion, no sign of regret. He was sentenced to life in prison, bringing an end to a case that had quietly unfolded across multiple communities. But even after the trial, questions remained. How did someone like Daniel go unnoticed for so long? The answer, according to investigators, was simple and unsettling. He didn't stand out. He blended in. He used normal interactions as a cover, and he understood exactly how to gain trust before breaking it. Today, the case serves as a reminder of how easily danger can hide behind familiarity, not in obvious places, not in loud, dramatic ways, but in quiet conversations, simple messages, and moments that seem completely harmless until it's too late. Because sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones you never think to question.
I like to dissect girls. Did you know I'm utterly insane?